Professor Hopwood, thank you for showing up to this Congress and giving this interesting talk.
Thank you for inviting me.
My first question to you is, how did you get into your research field of how people choose the diet?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I was trained in clinical psychology and assessment, and after I became tenured, which means that I have a permanent job for the rest of my life, I thought maybe I'll do something a little different, something more meaningful to me. And there's a lot of people who are younger than me who are into this topic. And so I thought, well, I want to do research in this, but also I want to provide a way for people who are interested in this topic to have a platform. So we started a society and a journal. So it's all kind of wrapped up in this broader endeavor for me of trying to create a subfield of psychology on this topic.
And what year was that when you started to go into this topic?
That was probably about 5 years ago or so. Yeah, what was that? What are we in right now? 2023? Math, 2018, 2016, 2018, somewhere in there.
And did a lot change, like supermarket-wise and restaurant-wise, for
Yeah,
options?
totally. I mean, I've been vegetarian most of my life, and that used to mean eating beans mostly and rice. And now, of course, you can go to any grocery store, at least in Europe and North America, and it's very easy. Other parts of the world, of course, it's been easy for a long time. If many places in Asia, there are lots of opportunities to eat vegetarian food. On the other hand, there's parts of the world where it's very difficult, even now, to find good vegetarian food. But yeah, certainly the options for things like alternative meats and cheeses in particular taste so much more similar to the animal-based food than they used to. There's also, a budding field of cell-based food. So it won't be long before there will be actual meat and actual cheese, but which doesn't involve exploiting animals. So that's sort of the next frontier, I think, in terms of diet.
That's something you would eat.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, it's ethically complicated because you have to get the cells from somewhere, so it depends on how you want to think about it. But certainly no animal has to suffer beyond the animal that gave the original cell, so that would be important for me.
Yes, and very fascinating thought that it's even possible.
Yeah, many things are possible these days, I suppose.
So, from your research you did in the last 5 years, what would you say are like the main takeaways that surprised you?
I'll talk a little bit about that in my talk today. So, I mean, I'm coming from a background of personality psychology, which means I'm interested in how people are different from each other. And to me, the interesting questions in this area are why people make dietary choices. So, if you eat animals, what's your reason for doing that? If you don't eat animals, what's your reason for doing that? And people have quite complicated reasons. But on average, you can sort of identify these broad motives. The most interesting thing for me is on the meat eating side. There are four motives. I won't give my talk away and steal my own thunder, but two of them have to do with thinking that it's just a normal thing to do. Everyone does it. What difference does it make? And it turns out that people with personality problems, antisocial personality in particular, sort of immature moral reasoning, tend to use those motives, whereas other motives, it doesn't have to do with that. And so I think that was not something that I expected to find, but we did.
Interesting, interesting. And what did you research before going into dietary motives?
We talked before this was recorded about how when you're young, you have to figure out what you're supposed to do. And I think I never got over that challenge. So I've done all kinds of different stuff because I can't focus on one thing. But in the past, I studied things like psychological assessment, diagnosis, personality disorders, personality change, psychotherapy. Yeah.
So do you feel like it's all coming together now?
Never. Never. That's kind of a scary thought. I wouldn't want everything to come together. I think that would be time for me to retire and start digging my grave. So
Not even like if you're on the deathbed and then suddenly you have like this flash and everything makes sense together?
we'll see. That day comes sooner and sooner every day. So we'll see how it is when that happens.
I'm confident that's still far in the future.
We'll see. Yeah, you never know.
Do you have any tips for students that want to go into a similar field?
I think the two things that I've never regretted were listening closely to other people and following your heart. So I think if you do those two things, it might not work out, but you give yourself the best chances. And then even if it doesn't work out, at least you did it for your own reasons.
Thank you. Very inspiring.
Yeah.
I think we both agree if more people would eat less meat, it would have a lot of beneficial consequences. But one of the personality type you described is that eating meat is so nice. But how can you be hedonistic and being a vegetarian?
I mean, the good news is that there's a lot of plant-based options available now that taste nearly exactly the same as cheese or meat. And so that's one easy thing that you can do. One of my favorite Instagram follows is Vegans of Zürich, and they have every week they'll have like, this is what's new in the grocery stores, or this is a new restaurant, and oftentimes they also tell you how much it costs and whether it's affordable. So I think this was a really good excuse 10 years ago that there's nothing that tastes good, you just have to eat boring food. But I think nowadays it's pretty easy to find exciting plant-based food.
What are some of your personal favorites?
I like ethnic food. I like Mediterranean food, falafel and hummus and stuff like that. I like East Asian food. And both of those cultures have always had a lot of good plant-based options. So I guess these are my two favorite options. I think the grocery stores also have quite a bit of plant-based substitutes, and some of them are quite good. Different people have different tastes. I have my own, but yeah, I think I never run out of exciting things to eat. This is never a problem for me.
What are your role models?
I've been reading a lot of biographies of famous vegetarians lately, so this is a really interesting question because people have such different reasons. But I actually started becoming a vegetarian when I was a child because my favorite band were the Smiths, and they had a song called Meat is Murder, and that song was convincing to me. So I guess I would have to say Morrissey is my role model in this area, although he's done some stuff later in his career that I'm not proud of, but nobody's perfect.
Yeah. So imagine, what's his name again?
Morrissey, he's the lead singer of the Smiths.
Morrissey comes to your home and you have to cook for him. What would you cook?
Whatever he wanted.
No, he says like your best meal.
What is my best meal? You know, we talked about this before about giving talks, that I never give the same talk twice. I also never cook the same thing twice, so I'm sorry to be difficult, but I would just cook whatever came to mind. I like to have a lot of fresh vegetables. I guess I would make a lot of fresh vegetables and hope that he likes it.
So you'd go to a supermarket and you would think like, which is the best vegetable for today?
I'm going to answer a slightly different question. You know, my favorite revelation coming to Switzerland is capuns. And I know that normally they're not vegetarian, but you can make vegan capuns. And this, to me, is so delicious. And I would take the chance that maybe Morrissey, like me, had never had capuns because he's not Swiss. And I would try my best to make that for him.
Oh, that's actually pretty nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would hope to impress him, but doubt that I could.
How would you rate your cooking skills?
I enjoy cooking a lot. I've enjoyed cooking my entire life. I've worked in restaurants before this career, and I'm not a chef, but I like the taste. My family seems to be, well, they're still alive anyway.
Could you imagine combining your research maybe with working with restaurants or with the food industry in general?
Yeah, there are a lot of people in my field who do work in restaurants by like making subtle changes to menus or the environment to see if that has an effect on what kinds of things people buy. So I think, also maybe working with the Mensa here to try to increase plant-based food would be a good idea. So yeah, totally, I could imagine doing that.
And would you do you have any tips for students that eat meat and they try to become vegetarian and it's difficult for them, how to make it easier?
One thing is, I think you don't have to be extreme. Maybe just try it and see how it goes. Another thing is that a lot of people kind of go back and forth. I myself have gone back and forth over the course of my life. And going back doesn't mean you can't go back again. So I think not being too hard on yourself is one important thing. I think the other thing is part of it is just trying new stuff. And some people enjoy trying new stuff. Like I just like trying new things. Other people are sort of like what's familiar. And so part of it is just taking a risk and seeing how it goes. And I think it helps to have a community. So finding other people who are also trying would probably help if that was your goal.
So thank you for your insightful talk and interview.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.